Oh, a new visitor from the woods. Welcome. Are you a lost wanderer, tired from a long journey? Then join me, sit beside the fireplace, and let me tell you some stories that may soothe your mood as you regain your strength. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also comment where you're watching from and what time it is. You all set? Good. Chapter 1. The Three Broomsticks and its History. Let's start the story with a journey to a place where warmth and camaraderie have flowed as freely as butterbeer for generations. Tonight, we explore the beloved cornerstone of Hogsmeade Village, the Three Broomsticks. Nestled on the main thoroughfare of Britain's only entirely magical village, the Three Broomsticks stands as more than merely a tavern or inn. It represents the beating heart of wizarding social life in the Highlands of Scotland, its windows glowing with golden light through countless winter snows and summer evenings. The establishment dates back to medieval times, when Hogsmeade was first settled in the shadow of the newly founded Hogwarts school. Historical records suggest that the Three Broomsticks was among the earliest businesses established in the village, created to serve both the school's staff and the growing magical community that flourished around the castle. The name itself stems from a curious tale. Legend holds that three medieval witches, weary from their travels, transfigured themselves into broomsticks to evade detection during a time of intense Muggle persecution. A kind village innkeeper took in these disguised broomsticks and kept them by his hearth. When night fell and the inn closed, the witches revealed themselves and blessed the establishment with enchantments of perpetual warmth and welcome, spells said to linger within its walls to this day. If you were to visit the Three Broomsticks, you would find yourself stepping from the cobbled street into a space of immediate comfort. Oak beams cross the ceiling above, darkened by centuries of hearth smoke. The main room centers around a grand fireplace, where flames dance perpetually, enchanted to adjust their intensity according to the weather outside. In winter, they roar with welcoming heat. In summer, they simmer gently, providing just enough warmth to take the edge off the Scottish Highland chill that persists even in August. Round tables of varying sizes dot the space, each accompanied by mismatched chairs that somehow form a harmonious whole. Brass lanterns suspended from the ceiling beams cast pools of warm light onto the polished wooden surfaces below. Along one wall runs a bar of ancient oak, its surface bearing the gentle indentations of 1,000 tankards set down in convivial conversation. The inn has known many proprietors through the centuries, but none perhaps as memorable as Madame Rosmerta, whose tenure began in the 1970s. With her curly hair, pretty face, and naturally welcoming demeanor, Rosmerta became as much an institution as the building itself. Her skill with beverages extended beyond mere pouring. She refined the recipe for butterbeer to the perfect balance of sweetness and warming spice that became the establishment's signature drink. The menu at the Three Broomsticks has remained remarkably consistent through the ages. Butterbeer, of course, flows freely from specially crafted taps, enchanted to maintain the perfect temperature. For those seeking stronger fare, oak-matured mead, fire whiskey, and red currant rum line the shelves behind the bar. During colder months, mulled mead simmers in a copper cauldron at the end of the bar, filling the room with aromas of cinnamon, clove, and magical herbs known only to the innkeeper. Food offerings have always leaned toward hearty comfort, designed to fortify patrons against the Scottish elements. Steak and kidney pie, shepherd's pie topped with golden mashed potatoes, and bubbling cauldrons of soup served with crusty bread have satisfied hungry patrons for generations. During Christmas, special roasts are prepared, accompanied by potatoes roasted in goose fat and Yorkshire puddings that rise impossibly high through a bit of culinary magic. The Three Broomsticks has witnessed countless moments of wizarding history within its walls. It was here that in 1612, the innkeeper of the time reportedly sheltered goblins during the rebellion, hiding them in the extensive cellars beneath the building. These cellars, expanded through magical means, stretch further than Muggle architecture would allow, housing not only barrels of beverages, but also, it is said, emergency provisions maintained since the time of Grindelwald's rise to power. During the First Wizarding War, the Three Broomsticks served as an informal gathering place for those who opposed Lord Voldemort. Whispered conversations in corner booths, messages passed between trusted hands, and the occasional appearance of Albus Dumbledore himself made the inn a nexus of quiet resistance. Madame Resmerta, ever observant, learned the skill of appearing completely unaware while missing nothing, a talent that served the side of light well. The establishment has long held a special place in the hearts of Hogwarts students. From the third year onward, when students are first permitted to visit Hogsmeade, the Three Broomsticks represents a taste of adult wizarding society, a place where they can sit and sip butterbeer, while feeling momentarily grown up and independent from school supervision. The upper floors of the building house comfortable rooms available for overnight stays. These chambers, while not opulent, offer clean beds with patchwork quilts, washstands with ever-warm water, and windows that frame views of either the bustling village street or the distant silhouette of Hogwarts Castle. Many rooms feature small fireplaces that, like the main hearth, are enchanted to match their warmth to the needs of the room's occupant. During the Second Wizarding War, the Three Broomsticks, like all of Hogsmeade, suffered under the shadow of fear. Death Eaters and their sympathizers watched the establishment closely, knowing its historical connection to Dumbledore and his allies. Madame Rosmerta herself fell victim to the imperious curse, forced to act against her nature in service to dark plans. This dark chapter in the inn's history serves as a reminder that even the warmest havens are not immune to the reach of evil. Yet, like the wizarding world itself, the Three Broomsticks recovered after Voldemort's fall. The fires were stoked higher, the stains on the floor from errant spells during Death Eater visits were scrubbed away, and the sound of laughter once again filled its spaces. The resilience of this humble establishment mirrors that of the community it serves, battered at times, but never broken. Beyond its historical significance, the Three Broomsticks holds cultural importance in wizarding Britain. It has featured in countless wizarding photographs, been mentioned in novels and memoirs, and even inspired a popular wizard's chess set, where the pieces resemble patrons and staff of the iconic inn. To many, it represents not just a place to eat and drink, but the ideal of wizarding community, warm, accepting, and touched with everyday magic that enhances rather than overwhelms the human experience. As moonlight now filters through our window and the fire burns lower, I wonder what conversations might you have, what secrets might you share, what memories might you make if you were to find yourself seated at a worn oak table in the Three Broomsticks on a snowy Hogsmeade evening. Chapter 2. The Functions of a Remembrall. In the quiet depths of magical innovation lie objects whose simplicity belies their profound understanding of human nature. Among these curious inventions, the Remembrall stands as a testament to how wizardkind has attempted to compensate for the imperfections of memory, a small glass sphere that serves as both helper and mystery to those who possess it. The Remembrall first emerged in wizarding society during the late 17th century, created by the somewhat forgetful but brilliant witch Perpetua Fancourt. Historical accounts suggest that Fancourt, frustrated by her own tendency to misplace items and forget appointments, sought to create a magical aid that would alert her to overlooked obligations. After 3 years of experimentation, combining memory charms with a form of sympathetic magic that could attune itself to its owner's mind, the first Remembrall was born. If you were to hold a Remembrall in your palm, you would find it pleasantly cool to the touch, a perfect sphere of crystal clear glass, approximately the size of a large marble. Inside, swirling mist lies dormant, moving almost imperceptibly until activated. The glass itself is remarkably durable, enchanted with unbreakable charms that have kept many a Remembrall intact despite being dropped, misplaced, or in the case of nervous students like Neville Longbottom, accidentally sat upon. The principle of the Remembrall's operation is elegantly straightforward, yet maddeningly imprecise. When held by its owner, the Remembrall forms a temporary magical connection with their consciousness, performing a gentle and undetectable scan of recent memories and current obligations. Should the device detect something forgotten, be it an undone task, a misplaced object, or an overlooked appointment, the swirling mist within turns a bright warning shade of scarlet. What makes the Remembrall both useful and frustrating is the peculiar limitation that has persisted through all iterations of its design. While it unfailingly alerts the user that something has been forgotten, it provides no indication of what that something might be. This curious constraint has led many wizarding scholars to debate whether it represents a fundamental limitation of memory sensing magic, or was an intentional design choice by Fancourt. Some magical theorists suggest that the Remembrall's vagueness serves as an exercise in memory improvement rather than a mere notification system. By alerting without specifying, it forces the wizard or witch to engage in the mental process of recollection, strengthening those neural and magical pathways over time, rather than allowing dependency on the device. Others, less charitably, suggest that Fancourt simply never solved the specificity problem and released the invention anyway. The manufacturing process of a Remembrall involves both conventional glass-blowing techniques and complex enchantment. Master glassblowers in wizarding communities, from Venice to Vienna, specialize in creating the perfect spheres, ensuring absolute clarity and symmetry. Once cooled, the empty globes are sent to magical artificers who perform the delicate work of imbuing them with the necessary charms. The primary enchantment is a modified form of legilimency, the magical art of extracting feelings and memories from another's mind, tempered and constrained to merely sense forgotten obligations rather than deeply probe thoughts. This is layered with a responsive charm that activates the mist's color change and a subtle binding spell that attunes the device to its owner after the first use. The mist itself is another marvel of magical craft, created from distilled memories freely given by witches and wizards, typically simple recollections of daily tasks or routine obligations. These memories are processed through a complex alchemical procedure that renders them into an ethereal vapor, neither liquid nor gas, capable of responding to the Remembrall's enchantments. Throughout wizarding history, various attempts have been made to improve upon the Remembrall's design. In the mid-19th century, Oswald Beamish created a specific Remembrall that would supposedly indicate the forgotten item through changing shapes in the mist. Unfortunately, the interpretations proved so abstract and subjective that users found themselves with new puzzles rather than helpful reminders. The original design, for all its limitations, remains superior in its honest simplicity. Remembralls have found their place in wizarding culture, primarily as gifts for students or the elderly. At Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, they have long been popular presents sent by concerned grandparents or parents to first years struggling with the overwhelming schedules and responsibilities of magical education. Though not on the official school supply list, they can commonly be spotted on dormitory nightstands throughout the castle. For young Neville Longbottom, his Remembrall, gifted by his grandmother Augusta, became both a help and an unintentional source of anxiety. When the sphere glowed crimson during his first year at Hogwarts, it highlighted not only his forgetfulness, but also became the catalyst for Harry Potter's discovery of his natural talent for flying. Such is the nature of magical objects. Their influence often extends far beyond their intended purpose. The magical community has developed something of a love-hate relationship with Remembralls over the centuries. Their obvious utility is balanced by the frustration of their limited function. As one wizarding saying goes, a Remembrall remembers that you've forgotten but forgets to remember what. For all their imperfection, Remembralls represent an important philosophical aspect of magical thinking, the acknowledgement that magic, like memory itself, has boundaries and limitations. Not every problem can be solved completely, even with the most powerful spells. Sometimes, magic merely illuminates our challenges rather than eliminating them entirely. Modern magical innovators continue to experiment with memory-enhancing devices. The end of the 20th century saw the introduction of the Recollector, a pendant that vibrates with increasing intensity as the forgotten task's deadline approaches. still not specifying the task, but adding a sense of urgency to the reminder. More recently, enchanted journals with pages that glow when containing overdue notes have gained popularity among organized witches and wizards. Yet for all these innovations, the humble Remembrall endures, unchanged in its fundamental design for over 3 centuries. There is something quintessentially magical about its perfect crystalline form, its swirling mist, and yes, even its maddening vagueness. It reminds us that the journey of remembering, the process of searching our minds and retracing our steps, holds value beyond the simple recovery of the forgotten item. As the candlelight dims and our exploration of this curious magical object comes to a close, consider this: what forgotten memories might cause your own internal Remembrall to glow crimson, and might their importance lie not in what was forgotten, but in the very act of remembering. Chapter 3. The Fall of the Ministry of Magic. Shadows grow longest in the moments before complete darkness. In the wizarding world's darkest hour, no shadow stretched farther than the one cast over the Ministry of Magic. An institution once thought impenetrable, brought to its knees not primarily through force, but through carefully orchestrated infiltration. Tonight, we shall walk the marble halls of power as they slowly succumbed to darkness, witnessing how the heart of wizarding Britain ceased to beat freely. The Ministry of Magic had stood for centuries as the cornerstone of magical governance in Britain, located deep beneath the streets of London, accessible through enchanted telephone booths and peculiar underground toilets. It represented order and stability in a world that balanced precariously alongside the unseeing Muggle population. Its grand atrium, with the Fountain of Magical Brethren standing proudly at its center, welcomed hundreds of witches and wizards daily, department heads and junior assistants alike, all moving in the intricate dance of magical administration. The seeds of the ministry's fall were planted long before the soil visibly darkened. Following Lord Voldemort's return at the conclusion of the Triwizard Tournament, Minister Cornelius Fudge made the catastrophic decision to deny the Dark Lord's resurrection. This choice, born of fear rather than malice, created the first fracture in the ministry's defenses, a willingness to embrace comforting falsehoods rather than uncomfortable truths. For nearly a year, while Voldemort gathered strength in the shadows, the ministry expended its energy discrediting Albus Dumbledore and Harry Potter, the very people who sought to warn them of impending disaster. The Daily Prophet, heavily influenced by the ministry, published article after article suggesting Potter's mental instability and Dumbledore's senility. This campaign of misinformation didn't merely fail to address the true threat, it actively weakened public vigilance. The corridors of the ministry began to change subtly. Conversations would hush when certain individuals passed by. Documents would mysteriously disappear from desks. Employees began to feel watched, though they couldn't identify by whom. The increasing paranoia created an atmosphere where trust eroded, and self-preservation took precedence over cooperation and transparency. When Rufus Scrimgeour replaced Fudge as minister following the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, an event that forced the ministry to acknowledge Voldemort's return, the damage was already extensive. Though Scrimgeour, a former head of the Auror Office, brought a warrior's mentality to the position, he inherited an institution already compromised from within. The infiltration of the ministry proceeded like a slow-acting poison, targeting key departments one by one. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement, theoretically the ministry's strongest defense, was subtly undermined through the strategic placement of imperious officials. Aurors found their investigations redirected, their resources mysteriously reassigned, and their most competent members sent on distant assignments that removed them from the center of power. The Imperious Curse became the most dangerous weapon in the Death Eater's arsenal. Invisible, nearly undetectable when performed with sufficient skill, it allowed Voldemort's followers to control key officials without raising alarm. Pius Thickness, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, fell victim to this insidious curse, becoming an unwilling puppet whose respected position provided a veneer of legitimacy to increasingly troubling directives. The Department of Magical Transportation found its flu network regulations amended, its portkey authorizations scrutinized, and its apparition monitoring systems subtly recalibrated, all changes ostensibly made for security, but actually designed to track the movements of Order of the Phoenix members and potential resistors. Meanwhile, the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures saw its werewolf registry used as a tool for recruitment by Fenrir Greyback, while officials turned a blind eye. The Department of International Magical Cooperation found itself increasingly isolated from allied magical governments, with communications monitored and diplomatic efforts undermined. Perhaps most chilling was the transformation of the Department of Mysteries. The enigmatic unspeakables who had long conducted their research beyond public scrutiny found their work redirected toward dark purposes, studying the power of dementors, the properties of time, and the nature of death, not for the advancement of magical knowledge, but to serve the Dark Lord's obsessions. As surveillance increased, resistance within the ministry became increasingly dangerous yet vital. Arthur Weasley and his small network of trusted colleagues in what outwardly appeared to be minor departments became crucial information conduits. The misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office, overlooked due to its perceived unimportance, became an unlikely center for covert communication. The night of August 1st, 1997, marked the culmination of this long infiltration. Minister Scrimgeour, who despite his flaws had refused to reveal Harry Potter's whereabouts even under torture, was murdered. The Ministry of Magic, the institution that had stood as the bulwark of magical governance since 1707, fell not with a grand battle, but with a carefully orchestrated coup. Thickness, fully under Death Eater control, was installed as minister. The atrium's fountain of magical brethren was destroyed, replaced by the Magic is Might monument, a massive black stone statue depicting a witch and wizard seated upon thrones made of contorted Muggle bodies. This grotesque artwork made visible the ideology that now commanded the heart of magical government. With control of the ministry came control of its extensive apparatus of power. The Daily Prophet fell completely under Death Eater influence, transforming from a manipulated publication to an outright propaganda machine. Departments were rapidly reorganized to serve the new regime's purposes, with the most dramatic change being the creation of the Muggle-born Registration Commission, headed by Dolores Umbridge, whose cruelty found full expression under the new order. The commission embodied the regime's ideology in its most vicious form. Under the guise of investigating how Muggle-borns stole magic from real witches and wizards, the commission ordered all Muggle-borns to register for interrogation. Those who appeared were subjected to show trials without legal representation, their wands confiscated, and many were sentenced to Azkaban or worse. The ministry's extensive records became weapons against the population they were meant to serve. Birth registries identified Muggle-born children. Property records located the homes of targeted families. Transportation logs tracked movement through approved channels. The bureaucratic systems created to administer an orderly society were perverted into tools of oppression. Throughout this dark period, pockets of resistance persisted within the ministry's walls. Employees like Dirk Cresswell, until his eventual escape, worked to falsify genealogy records to protect Muggle-borns. Others misfiled important documents, delayed implementing the most draconian policies, or passed warnings through covert channels. These small acts of defiance, each carrying the risk of detection and death, represented the ministry as it should have been, protector rather than persecutor. For ordinary citizens, the transformation of the ministry created a nightmarish inversion of normal life. The very institution meant to protect them became the source of terror. Going to work meant potential interrogation. Receiving an official owl brought dread rather than routine information. Visiting the ministry, once a mundane administrative task, became fraught with danger. The new regime's control extended beyond the ministry building itself. Magical homes were raided under the pretext of searching for Muggle-borns, or undesirables. Diagon Alley, once the vibrant commercial heart of wizarding Britain, grew dark as shops closed and people hurried through its streets, eyes downcast to avoid unwanted attention. Hogsmeade Village saw increased patrols of Death Eaters, monitoring the population and enforcing curfews. Hogwarts School itself, under the imposed leadership of Severus Snape, whose complex loyalties remained hidden, became an extension of the Ministry's control. The subject of Muggle studies was perverted into anti-Muggle propaganda. Defense against the dark arts transformed into simply dark arts under the Carrow siblings. Even students became enforcers, with some Slytherins granted authority to punish their peers. The Ministry's fall revealed a difficult truth about institutions. Their strength derives not from their marble halls or centuries of tradition, but from the integrity of those who staff them. When compromise and fear replaced courage and principle, the edifice, however grand, crumbled from within. Liberation finally came through forces largely external to the Ministry itself. The Battle of Hogwarts, initiated by Harry Potter's return and culminating in Voldemort's defeat, broke the power of the Death Eaters. In the aftermath, Kingsley Shacklebolt was appointed interim minister for magic, beginning the long process of rebuilding not just the physical ministry, but its ethical foundation. The post-war reformation of the ministry addressed many of the vulnerabilities that had enabled its fall. Anti-corruption measures were implemented. The power of the minister was checked through new oversight councils. The Auror Office was rebuilt with emphasis on resistance to the Imperious Curse. Most importantly, positions of influence were filled by those who had demonstrated their commitment to equality during the darkest times. As dawn now breaks on our contemplation of this somber chapter in wizarding history, consider when institutions meant to protect instead become weapons of oppression. Where does the true responsibility lie? With the visible figureheads of power, or with each individual who chooses silence over resistance in the face of encroaching darkness? Chapter 4. The Publications of Xenophilius Lovegood. The printed word holds a curious magic all its own, a permanence that even enchanted parchments cannot truly replicate. In the corners of wizarding society, away from the mainstream narratives and accepted truths, there have always existed publications that dare to question, to imagine, and sometimes to reveal truths hidden in plain sight. None embodies this tradition more colorfully than the Quibbler, and no editor has pursued alternative wisdom with more unwavering dedication than its eccentric founder, Xenophilius Lovegood. If you were to visit the peculiar rook-shaped house near Ottery St. Catchpole, climbing the zigzagging staircase past rooms of curious inventions and collections, you would eventually reach the heart of the Quibbler's operations, a cluttered yet somehow methodical workspace where imagination and investigation blend seamlessly together. Here, amid stacks of parchment, bottles of colorful ink, and specimens of dubious origin, Xenophilius Lovegood has crafted one of wizarding Britain's most unusual periodicals for over 2 decades. The Quibbler began as a modest newsletter in the late 1970s, when Xenophilius, then a young wizard who had studied briefly in the Department of Mysteries before deciding institutional research was too constrained for his intellectual appetites, began circulating his theories among like-minded friends. What began as hand-copied parchments soon grew into a proper publication, as Xenophilius invested in a magical printing press, a device said to have once belonged to Adalbert Waffling, though this claim, like many surrounding the Quibbler, remains unverified. The publication's early years coincided with the First Wizarding War, a time when the wizarding media was subject to both official censorship and the intimidating influence of Lord Voldemort's supporters. While the Daily Prophet reported only what the ministry deemed appropriate, Xenophilius used his fledgling magazine to speculate on everything from ministry corruption to the possible magical creatures being weaponized by dark forces. Though most of these theories were dismissed as fantastical, they created a space where readers could question official narratives during a time of carefully controlled information. The visual style of the Quibbler has remained remarkably consistent through the decades, a chaotic yet charming assemblage of typefaces, hand-drawn illustrations, and occasionally interactive elements that require readers to view the text upside down or through specially enchanted spectacles included as inserts. The magazine's motto, "The truth is stranger than you can imagine," appears on every cover, often surrounding an illustration of a creature whose existence mainstream magizoologists vehemently deny. Content within the Quibbler follows no conventional journalistic structure. A typical issue might feature an exposé on Cornelius Fudge's supposed goblin pie recipe, a metaphorical accusation of corruption involving the banking system, alongside a guide to protecting one's home from nargles, followed by first-hand accounts from readers who claim to have witnessed crumple-horned snorkaks during their travels, conspiracy theories involving prominent wizarding figures, neighbor DIY spells for revealing hidden messages in ministry pamphlets. The readership of the Quibbler has traditionally consisted of those on the fringes of wizarding society, those who, like Xenophilius himself, see magic as infinitely more mysterious and expansive than the standardized spells taught at Hogwarts or the regulated enchantments approved by the ministry. Subscription numbers rarely exceeded a few hundred during the magazine's first 2 decades, sustained largely by a dedicated community who found comfort in questioning established truths. This change ebbed dramatically in 1996, when the Quibbler published what would become its most famous issue, an extensive interview with Harry Potter detailing Voldemort's return, conducted by Rita Skeeter, but published by Xenophilius after the Daily Prophet refused to print Potter's account. This edition sold out multiple print runs, was banned at Hogwarts, thus guaranteeing every student read it, and briefly transformed the Quibbler from an obscure alternative publication into a relevant journalistic force. Xenophilius's daughter, Luna, has featured prominently in the publication's history. Growing up in the shadow of the printing press, Luna absorbed her father's willingness to believe in possibilities others dismissed. Her contributions to the Quibbler began appearing during her Hogwarts years, often in the form of illustrations or field notes on unusual creatures spotted on school grounds. Her perspective, somehow both dreamy and incisive, complemented her father's more elaborate theories with observations grounded in her daily experiences. The production of the Quibbler has always been a largely solitary endeavor. Unlike the Daily Prophet with its extensive staff of reporters, photographers, and editors, Xenophilius handles nearly every aspect himself. The printing press operates with a combination of mechanical components and charms of his own modification. Subscription owls are managed from a small owlery attached to the house. Even distribution to wizarding newsstands is often handled personally, with Xenophilius making monthly journeys to ensure his publication reaches wherever curious minds might discover it. The financial model of the Quibbler defies conventional business wisdom. Subscription rates have remained remarkably low, supplemented by equally inexpensive advertisements for products as unconventional as the publication itself: Gertie root infusions, protective amulets against various improbable threats, and self-illustrated guidebooks to creatures recognized by neither the ministry nor Hogwarts textbooks. One suspects that Xenophilius values the dissemination of ideas above profit margins. During the height of the Second Wizarding War, the Quibbler underwent its most significant transformation. After Luna was taken by Death Eaters to punish Xenophilius for his supportive coverage of Harry Potter, the publication reversed course dramatically. Issues began featuring propaganda supporting the Voldemort-controlled ministry and denouncing undesirable Number 1. To informed readers, this abrupt change signaled clearly that something was amiss with the Lovegoods. Yet even in this dark period, subtle resistance could be found within the Quibbler's pages. Careful readers noted that certain arrangements of text, when decoded according to methods previously published in the magazine, contained hidden messages of support for the resistance. Illustrations contained symbolic elements representing hope and eventual triumph over darkness. Xenophilius, even under extreme duress, found ways to maintain his commitment to truth, albeit concealed beneath a veneer of compliance. After the war's end and Luna's safe return, the Quibbler gradually recovered its distinctive voice, though perhaps with a more tempered approach to certain subjects. Articles began to include more substantiated research alongside the speculative theories. Features on the reconstruction of wizarding society provided genuine insight into communities overlooked by mainstream publications. The experiences of the war seemed to have focused Xenophilius's considerable intellectual energy toward more grounded concerns, without entirely abandoning the imaginative possibilities that had always defined his work. In the years following the defeat of Voldemort, the Quibbler achieved a curious position in wizarding media, still regarded with amused skepticism by many, yet recognized for its willingness to publish perspectives that more established outlets would not touch. Its coverage of the integration challenges faced by werewolves, house elves, and other marginalized magical beings provided one of the few platforms where these voices could be heard directly, rather than interpreted through the lens of wizarding privilege. Luna's marriage to Rolf Scamander, grandson of the famed magizoologist Newt Scamander, brought a fascinating new dimension to the Quibbler's coverage of magical creatures. Expeditions jointly funded by the publication and various zoological research grants resulted in legitimately groundbreaking discoveries, proving that at least some of Xenophilius's supposedly fantastical creatures had basis in reality, if not exactly as he had described them. The printing techniques of the Quibbler deserve special mention for their innovative approach to magical journalism. Unlike the Daily Prophet's animated photographs, Xenophilius experimented with immersive illustrations that respond to the reader's emotions, brightening when met with curiosity, revealing additional details when questioned aloud, or even releasing appropriate scents when describing particularly aromatic subjects. These enchantments, while sometimes unpredictable, create a reading experience unlike any other in the wizarding world. The legacy of Xenophilius Lovegood's publications extends beyond the content itself to represent an essential counterbalance in wizarding society, a reminder that accepted knowledge has boundaries that can and should be questioned, that imagination serves a vital function alongside reason, and that sometimes the most unlikely sources reveal truths others have overlooked or deliberately concealed. As the lamplight grows dim and our exploration of this unusual corner of wizarding media concludes, I wonder what unpopular truths might you be willing to entertain, and what dismissed possibilities might actually illuminate your understanding, if only you dared to read the world through Quibbler-tinted specter specs. Chapter 5. The Finality of the Killing Curse. There exists in the shadowed corners of magical knowledge a spell so terrible, so fundamentally opposed to the natural order, that its very utterance tears at the fabric between life and death. Among the three unforgivable curses, one stands apart in its terrible simplicity and irrevocable consequence: Avada Kedavra, the Killing Curse. As twilight deepens outside our window, we shall examine this darkest of spells, not to glorify its power, but to understand the grave boundaries of magic that should never be crossed. The origins of the Killing Curse are shrouded in antiquity. Magical historians believe it emerged during the darkest periods of medieval wizarding conflicts, though some ancient texts suggest forms of the spell existed in Mesopotamian and Egyptian magical traditions thousands of years earlier. The modern incantation Avada Kedavra appears to have Aramaic roots, a twisted corruption of healing phrases meaning, "Let the thing be destroyed," or "I create as I speak," a perversion of creation into instant destruction. Unlike most spells in the wizarding repertoire, the Killing Curse leaves no visible mark upon its victims. Those who have witnessed its use describe a flash of blinding green light, accompanied by a rushing sound like forceful wind. The victim falls instantly, their life extinguished between one heartbeat and the next. No physical trauma appears on the body, no wound, no sign of struggle or pain. Medical examination reveals no cause of death recognizable to either magical or muggle forensics. The body simply exists one moment and becomes an empty vessel the next, the animating force of life severed completely from its physical housing. What separates the Killing Curse from other destructive magic is not merely its lethality, for indeed, many spells can cause death if used with sufficient force or malice. Rather, It is the direct targeting of the very essence of life itself. Where Confringo might blast a body apart, or Sectum Sempra might cause fatal bleeding, Avada Kedavra bypasses all physical intermediaries to extinguish the spark of existence directly. It is, in the most literal sense, a spell that kills rather than a spell that causes death as a consequence. The magical mechanism of the killing curse has been studied carefully by unspeakables in the Department of Mysteries, though such research is conducted with the utmost secrecy and ethical constraints. Current magical theory suggests that the curse creates a momentary bridge between our realm and the void beyond, allowing death to flow instantaneously through the caster and into the victim. This explains the particular hollow sensation reported by the few who have cast the curse, and later been willing to describe the experience, a feeling of becoming briefly a conduit for nothingness itself. What makes the killing curse particularly insidious is that it requires no special magical apparatus, no rare ingredients, no elaborate ritual, merely a wand, the correct incantation, and most crucially, the proper intent. This last component represents the greatest barrier to its use, for the killing curse cannot be cast successfully through mere anger or momentary hatred. It requires a profound intent to end life, a complete emotional commitment to the act of killing that most wizards and witches, even in moments of great distress, cannot summon. As explained by the impostor Alastor Moody, actually Barty Crouch Jr., during a defense against the dark arts class at Hogwarts. A classroom of students could point their wands at him and speak the words, yet he would likely suffer nothing worse than a nosebleed. This is not because young witches and wizards lack magical power, but because the psychological architecture required to fuel the curse requires a soul already damaged by the intent to kill. The Ministry of Magic classified Avada Kedavra as an unforgivable curse in 1717, establishing that its use against another human being would result in a life sentence in Azkaban. This classification acknowledges not merely the fatal outcome of the spell, but its fundamental nature as an act that damages the caster's soul. The use of the killing curse is considered irredeemable, not only for what it does to the victim, but for what one must become to cast it successfully. During both Wizarding Wars, the Ministry temporarily authorized Aurors to use unforgivable curses against Death Eaters, a controversial decision that many ethical scholars argue represented a dangerous compromise of the very values the Ministry sought to defend. Many Aurors, including Alastor Moody, refused to employ the killing curse even when legally permitted, preferring to subdue and capture dark wizards through other means. This principled stance reflected the understanding that to use such magic, even against enemies, exacts a profound cost from the caster. Lord Voldemort and his Death Eaters, by contrast, employed the killing curse freely, dispatching opponents, inconvenient witnesses, and sometimes innocent bystanders with casual cruelty. Voldemort particularly, whose soul was already fragmented through the creation of Horcruxes, the spiritual damage of casting Avada Kedavra repeatedly likely meant little, while the psychological intimidation value of the spell's distinctive green flash served his campaign of terror effectively. Throughout wizarding history, only one person is known to have survived the killing curse: Harry Potter. That extraordinary night in Godric's Hollow, when the curse rebounded from the infant Harry to strike Voldemort himself, represents the sole documented instance of the spell failing to kill its intended target. This unprecedented survival occurred, not through any action of Harry's, but through ancient protective magic invoked by his mother's sacrificial death. Lily Potter's willingness to die in her son's place created a shield of love that the curse, powered by hatred, could not penetrate. The rebounding of the killing curse created a connection between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort that magical theorists still struggle to fully explain. The transfer of certain abilities, most notably Parseltongue, and the creation of an unwitting Horcrux within Harry himself, suggest that the interrupted curse created magical consequences far beyond its intended purpose. Indeed, Harry's survival represents perhaps the most profound magical mystery of modern times. a testament to the principle that the deepest forms of magic remain beyond even the most powerful dark wizard's full comprehension. In the years following Voldemort's defeat, debate has continued among magical ethicists about whether knowledge of the killing curse should be more strictly controlled. Some argue that even theoretical understanding of its methodology should be restricted to licensed horrors and unspeakables, while others maintain that comprehending the nature of dark magic is essential to defending against it. Currently, while detailed instruction remains prohibited, general information about the curse is included in advanced defense against the dark arts education to ensure proper recognition and response. Beyond its practical applications in combat, the killing curse holds a significant place in wizarding philosophy regarding the boundaries of legitimate magic. Many magical traditions hold that direct interference with the natural processes of life and death represents a fundamental transgression, a view that places Avada Kedavra alongside necromancy and the creation of inferi as magic that violates universal laws rather than working within them. This perspective suggests that such magic is not merely morally wrong, but fundamentally misaligned with the proper role of wizard kind in relation to natural forces. The wand movements associated with the killing curse are not widely documented in accessible texts, but those who have studied defense against the dark arts at the highest levels describe a sharp, jabbing motion, unlike the more fluid gestures of standard charms and transfigurations. This abrupt movement metaphorically represents the sudden severance of life from body, a magical gesture that brooks no hesitation or ambivalence. Perhaps most terrifying is that the killing curse cannot be blocked by standard magical shields or counterspells, while physical objects can intercept it, and exceptionally powerful wizards like Albus Dumbledore have demonstrated the ability to conjure or animate objects into its path during duels. No direct magical defense exists other than dodging or interrupting the caster before the spell is completed. This property makes Avada Kedavra particularly feared among those who face Death Eaters in combat, as it renders many standard dueling techniques ineffective. The voice of a wizard casting the killing curse is said to undergo a subtle alteration. A coldness enters the tone, a disconnect from normal human empathy that both reflects and reinforces the caster's intent. Those who have heard the incantation and survived to describe it speak of a quality in the voice that seems to reach beyond the physical sound, as though the words themselves carry an echo of the void they seek to invoke. As our candle burns lower and the shadows grow longer in this examination of magic's darkest expression, we might reflect, what does the existence of such a spell, and the strict taboos surrounding it, reveal about the relationship between power and restraint in the wizarding world? And how might the choice to turn away from such power, even when sorely tempted, define the true measure of a witch or wizard's character? Chapter 6. The Sweet Offerings of Honeydukes. As snowflakes dance on the winter air in Hogsmeade Village, one shop glows with particular warmth and invitation, a place where sweetness and magic blend in perfect harmony. Honeyduke's Sweet Shop stands as a testament to wizarding confectionery at its finest, a colorful haven that has delighted generations of young witches and wizards with treats that surprise, delight, and occasionally alarm the unsuspecting consumer. The cheerful establishment with its distinctive pink and mint green striped awning has occupied the same spot on Hogsmeade's High Street since 1641. Its founding coincided with the relaxation of certain magical secrecy laws that had previously restricted the open sale of enchanted foodstuffs. Ambrosius Flume, a talented confectioner with a particular gift for incorporating magical effects into sweets, established the shop with his wife Beatrice after years of selling their creations from their cottage kitchen. The original Honeydukes was a modest affair, a single room with wooden shelves displaying perhaps 24 varieties of magical sweets. Success came swiftly, however, and by the end of the 17th century, the Flumes had expanded into neighboring buildings, creating the Warren-like interior that continues to characterize the shop today. The business has remained in family hands throughout its long history, with each generation adding their own innovations while maintaining beloved classics. If you were to visit Honeyduke's today, pushing open the oak door with its sugar quill-shaped handle, you would be greeted immediately by a symphony of scents: chocolate and caramel, butterscotch and peppermint, fruit essences and honey, all mingling in a fragrance that many Hogwarts alumni report can transport them instantly back to their school days. The interior glows with soft golden light from enchanted lanterns, shaped like oversized wrapped candies, illuminating displays that seem to defy both gravity and logic. The current proprietors, Ambrosius and Beatrice Flume, descendants of the founders and bearing the same traditional family names, maintain an impressive organization system within what appears to casual visitors as cheerful chaos. Sweets are arranged not alphabetically or by flavor, but according to their magical properties and effects. This system, while occasionally confusing to first-time visitors, makes perfect sense to regular patrons who know to look for levitating sherbets near the ceiling or cooling mints in the perpetually frosted corner. Among Honeyduke's most famous offerings, chocolate frogs stand as perhaps the most iconic. These enchanted confections consist of solid chocolate formed into perfect frog replicas, then animated with a charm that gives them one good jump when their package is opened. The spell wears off quickly, ensuring no one's chocolate escapes entirely, but provides just enough magical surprise to delight young customers. The accompanying famous witch or wizard card, part of a continuously updated collectible series, often becomes more valuable to students than the chocolate itself. The creation of chocolate frogs involves a process that blends traditional chocolate making with precise charm work. Finest quality chocolate is melted in copper cauldrons over carefully regulated magical flames that never scorch the sensitive cocoa butter. The liquid chocolate is then poured into molds carved from blocks of ice that have been enchanted to remain frozen while imparting no moisture to the chocolate. As the chocolate cools, a master charmer applies the animation spell using a specially designed narrow wand that allows for delicate magical control. The finished frogs are then wrapped in pentagonal boxes with the golden cards tucked inside. Equally beloved are Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, though these are actually a wholesale product that Honeyduke stocks rather than produces. These innocuous-looking jelly beans live up to their name by offering flavors ranging from the mundane cherry, lemon, chocolate, to the unexpected, grass pepper, sardine, to the downright alarming, earwax, vomit, tripe. Legend holds that Bertie Bott himself discovered the spell for creating them accidentally when attempting to create candies that tasted of different foods, and finding his magic extended to encompass, quite literally, every flavor imaginable. For students seeking more practical magical effects, sugar quills provide the perfect classroom companion, quill-shaped candies that allow surreptitious snacking during lessons, as they perfectly resemble ordinary writing implements until nibbled. The cries, tall line structure of these treats is reinforced with a mild preserving charm that prevents them from becoming sticky or misshapen in warm weather, while the flavoring enchantments create a taste that changes subtly as one progresses from the feathered end to the tip. More dramatic are the fizzing whiz-bees, sherbet balls that cause the consumer to levitate slightly off the ground while they dissolve. The creation of these treats involves an intricate balance of magical ingredients: ground fairy wings, ethically sourced from natural shedding, billywig stings, and moon-harvested honey crystals, combined with conventional sherbet components. The resulting confection must be stored in special gravity-resistant containers to prevent entire shelves from floating away. During winter months, Honeyduke's famous pepper imps become particularly popular. These tiny black candies cause the eater to breathe fire for several seconds after consumption, not dangerous flames, but warm enough to heat chilled hands or melt snow. The spicy cinnamon flavor coupled with this practical warming effect makes them a staple in many students' pockets during Hogsmeade weekends in December. For those with more daring palates, blood pops, lollipops that taste of actual blood, cater to vampire customers and the occasional witch or wizard with unusual tastes. Originally created as a humane alternative for vampires trying to integrate into wizarding society, these deep crimson sweets, have developed a surprising following among certain Hogwarts students who enjoy shocking their classmates with their apparent gruesomeness. The shop's back room houses some of their more specialized creations, including the infamous cockroach clusters, chocolate-covered cockroach pieces, primarily purchased as prank items, and acid pops, which can burn holes in tongues if consumed too enthusiastically. These products are subject to age restrictions and carry warning labels, though this hardly deters determined young pranksters. Seasonally, Honeydukes offers specialties that appear for only brief periods each year. Easter brings chocolate eggs that chirp musically when tapped with a wand, their melodies varying depending on the filling inside. Halloween features haunted toffee that moans quietly when bitten into, and Christmas showcases snowflake swirls, delicate sugar confections that melt on the tongue while creating the brief sensation of standing in gently falling snow. The production facilities for these magical confections exist in a separate building behind the main shop, a pristine space that contrasts sharply with the colorful retail chaos. Here, Honeydukes employs approximately 20 staff members, including specialist charm casters, potion masters with expertise in edible preparations, and traditional confectioners. All employees sign extensive confidentiality agreements regarding the proprietary magical processes, though family recipes are only ever entrusted to direct Flume descendants. The shop's most valuable secret, however, is known only to a select few Hogwarts students across the generations: the existence of a secret passageway connecting Honeydukes' cellar directly to Hogwarts Castle. This tunnel, accessed through a trapdoor in the storeroom floor, has enabled countless illicit visits by students not officially permitted to visit Hogsmeade. The Flume family maintains a careful ignorance about this architectural quirk, having decided generations ago that some traditions are best left unacknowledged. Financially, Honeydukes represents one of Wizarding Britain's most stable businesses. The combination of constant school-age customers, nostalgic adults, and tourists visiting the famous Wizarding Village creates a reliable customer base. Additionally, their mail-order business, allowing parents to send sweet packages to Hogwarts students, accounts for nearly a third of their annual revenue. Special Honeydukes hampers are particularly popular around examination time, when anxious parents often attempt to sweeten the academic pressure with carefully selected treats. Beyond mere commerce, Honeydukes has embedded itself deeply in Wizarding cultural tradition. Many adult wizards and witches can recall their first visit with perfect clarity: the overwhelming sensory experience, the difficult decision of how to spend limited pocket money, the discoveries of personal favorites that would remain so throughout their lives. First dates often unfold among its crowded aisles, and wedding favor tables frequently feature personalized selections from the beloved shop. Even in the darkest days of the Second Wizarding War, when many Hogsmeade businesses closed or suffered under Death Eater surveillance, Honeydukes continued operations under restricted hours. The Flumes, quietly supportive of the resistance, sometimes included coded messages in sweet packages sent to Hogwarts students when direct communication became too dangerous. A simple pattern of candies could indicate safe houses or warning of increased surveillance around the village. As our exploration of this magical confectionery draws to a close, the jars of sweets seem to glow more softly in their enchanted light, and one might almost catch the faint scent of chocolate and magic lingering in the air. What childhood delight might you rediscover if you were to visit Honeydukes today, and which magical sweet would most tempt you to part with your silver sickles and bronze nuts? Chapter 7. The Design of a Sneakoscope. In the realm of magical security, certain devices transcend mere detection to become extensions of our innate human capacity for recognizing deception. Among these ingenious inventions, perhaps none is more elegantly designed nor more intuitively responsive than the Sneakoscope, a watchful sentinel against dishonesty that has protected Wizarding homes, businesses, and institutions for centuries. Tonight, we shall uncover the mysteries behind this spinning, whistling guardian of truth. The Sneakoscope first emerged in Wizarding society during the tumultuous 15th century, a period marked by growing tensions between magical and non-magical communities that necessitated greater vigilance among witches and wizards. Credit for its invention is generally attributed to the Scottish witch Alida Macwhistle, who had lost several family members to witch-hunting activities and sought to create an early warning system against those approaching with malicious intent. Macwhistle's original design, several examples of which are preserved in the Museum of Magical Security in Edinburgh, was considerably larger and less refined than modern versions. Approximately the size of a melon, the first sneakoscopes were crafted from silver-infused glass blown into a distinctive top-like shape, balanced on a carved wooden base embedded with detection runes. These early models could only detect outright lies spoken in their presence, emitting a low hum rather than the characteristic whistle of contemporary devices. If you were to examine a modern sneakoscope closely, you would find it to be an elegant study in magical craftsmanship. The standard model stands approximately 4 inches tall when balanced on its pointed base. The main body consists of a hollow glass sphere, often with spiral patterns etched into its surface that become visible when the device activates. Inside, suspended by seemingly nothing at the center, floats a small arrangement of precisely calibrated components that remain motionless when the device is inactive. These internal components represent perhaps the most ingenious aspect of sneakoscope design. Unlike many magical devices that rely on a single enchantment, sneakoscopes incorporate a sophisticated array of complementary charms that work in concert. At their core lies a specially treated spine of dragon heartstring, usually Chinese fireball, prized for its sensitivity to emotional fluctuations. Around this core, thin filaments of silver and gold are wound in precise geometric patterns derived from ancient arithmetic formulas relating to truth and deception. The magical theory behind sneakoscopes draws upon the fundamental principle that deception creates subtle disturbances in the ambient magic that surrounds all witches and wizards. When someone nearby harbors untrustworthiness, whether actively lying, concealing important information, or planning imminent betrayal, their magical aura generates distinctive patterns of interference. The sneakoscope's internal components are calibrated to resonate with these particular disruptions, much as a tuning fork vibrates in response to its matching frequency. This resonance manifests in the device's 2 signature behaviors, spinning and whistling. The rotation begins slowly at first, as the internal components detect initial signs of deception, gradually increasing in speed as the untrustworthiness becomes more pronounced or imminent. The whistling sound, produced by air passing through precisely sized apertures in the glass as the device spins, serves as an audible alert, ensuring that even a distracted witch or wizard will notice the warning. The manufacturing process for quality sneakoscopes involves both conventional craftsmanship and delicate spellwork. The glass spheres are traditionally mouth-blown by skilled artisans who must achieve perfect symmetry to ensure the device will spin smoothly when activated. After cooling, the glass undergoes a month-long treatment in a solution of powdered moonstone and essence of honesty, a rare potion distilled from freely given unicorn tears that imbues the material with enhanced receptivity to deceptive energies. The internal components are assembled under specific lunar conditions, typically during the waxing moon when divinatory magic is at its most potent. Master charmers apply no fewer than 17 distinct enchantments, each building upon the last in a precisely timed sequence. A single mistake in this process renders the entire device useless, explaining why high-quality sneakoscopes command premium prices in shops like Diagon Alley's Wiseacres Wizarding Equipment. Over centuries of development, sneakoscopes have evolved into several distinct varieties tailored to different security needs. The basic pocket sneakoscope, popular among students and travelers, focuses primarily on detecting direct lies and immediate malicious intent within a range of approximately 20 feet. These compact models sacrifice some sensitivity for portability and discretion, making them ideal for assessing new acquaintances or monitoring public spaces without drawing attention. Professional-grade security sneakoscopes, used by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement and high-security businesses like Gringotts, feature enhanced range and specificity. These larger models, typically 8 to 10 inches in diameter, can detect not only active deception but also concealed identities and coercion through imperious or similar control spells. Their sensitivity can be adjusted according to security needs, and some include directional indicators that point toward the source of untrustworthiness. The most sophisticated versions, developed for Aurora operations, incorporate selective attunement capabilities, allowing them to focus on particular forms of deception while ignoring others. This refinement proves essential in complex investigations where minor deceptions might mask more significant threats. Such devices require periodic recalibration by skilled magical maintenance technicians to maintain their precision. Despite their utility, sneakoscopes are not without limitations that users must understand to employ them effectively. Most significantly, they cannot distinguish between malicious deception and benign untruths, such as surprise party planning or harmless secrets. This lack of discernment explains the frequent false alarms experienced by Ronald Weasley's pocket sneakoscope during his school years at Hogwarts. Surrounded by teenagers keeping various innocent secrets, the device had little opportunity for silence. Environmental factors also influence sneakoscope reliability. Areas with high ambient magic, such as Hogwarts Castle or the Ministry of Magic, create background magical noise that can mask the subtle disruptions caused by deception. Similarly, locations where magical catastrophes or dark magic has recently occurred may trigger false alarms as residual magical disturbances mimic the patterns of untrustworthy intent. The cultural impact of sneakoscopes extends beyond their practical security applications. In wizarding homes, the presence of a sneakoscope on the mantelpiece often symbolizes a family's commitment to honesty and transparency. Gift-giving of these devices traditionally carries subtle social messaging. Presenting a sneakoscope might gently suggest to the recipient that their honesty has been questioned, or alternatively, demonstrate trust by giving them a tool to verify others' truthfulness. In educational settings, sneakoscopes have served varying purposes through different eras. While never formally incorporated into the Hogwarts curriculum, they frequently appear in Defense Against the Dark Arts classrooms as practical examples of protective magical devices. During particularly paranoid periods of wizarding history, some educational institutions installed sneakoscopes in examination halls to detect cheating, though this practice has largely been abandoned due to the high rate of false positives caused by students' general anxiety rather than actual dishonesty. The magical community maintains certain etiquette around sneakoscope use. Activating one in social situations without explanation is considered highly offensive, implying distrust of those present. Many wizarding establishments post notices requesting that patrons disable personal security devices, placing the responsibility for security with the proprietors rather than individuals. Interestingly, the Three Broomsticks in Hogsmeade maintains a long-standing exception to this custom, with Madame Rosmerta famously declaring that those with nothing to hide have nothing to fear from a spinning top. During both wizarding wars, sneakoscopes became essential tools for those resisting Lord Voldemort's forces. Members of the Order of the Phoenix carried specialized versions, modified to detect individuals under the Imperious Curse, helping identify compromised colleagues. Safe houses typically contained multiple overlapping devices, creating a comprehensive security net against infiltration. The device's limitations became tragically apparent, however, when Peter Pettigrew's long-term deception remained undetected, a failure that magical security experts attribute to the gradual nature of his betrayal, rather than a sudden decision that would trigger stronger magical disruptions. Modern innovations in sneakoscope technology include attempts to address these historical shortcomings. The stealth sneakoscope, developed in the post-war period, operates silently, illuminating rather than whistling when activated, useful for security situations where audible alarms might alert the very individuals being monitored. The quantifying sneakoscope incorporates color-changing elements that indicate the severity of detected untrustworthiness through different hues, allowing users to distinguish between minor deceptions and serious threats. Perhaps most interesting from a magical theory perspective are experimental models that incorporate memory materials, components capable of learning, patterns of deception associated with specific individuals. These personalized sneakoscopes, still rare and expensive, develop increasing sensitivity to particular magical signatures over time, potentially overcoming the anonymous nature of traditional models. The humble sneakoscope, despite its occasional over-enthusiasm and limitations, remains one of wizardkind's most enduring security innovations, a physical manifestation of our innate desire to discern truth from falsehood, loyalty from betrayal. Its spinning, whistling presence has saved countless lives while simultaneously reminding us that complete security, like perfect honesty, remains an aspiration rather than an achievement. As this night's illumination dims and our examination of this curious device concludes, I wonder what secrets might your own sneakoscope reveal in the quiet corners of your life, and would you truly wish to know all that it might detect? Chapter 8. The Infiltration of Hogwarts. Throughout the centuries, Hogwarts' school of witchcraft and wizardry has stood as a bastion of magical education, its ancient stones layered with protective enchantments, its boundaries guarded by spells of detection and deterrence, its very foundations steeped in magic so old it has become part of the castle itself. Yet, despite these formidable defenses, the school has proven vulnerable at crucial moments in wizarding history. As twilight settles around us, let us explore those rare but significant breaches that have tested the limits of Hogwarts' legendary security. The very architecture of Hogwarts was designed with protection in mind. The four founders, Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Salazar Slytherin, collaborated to create not merely a school, but a sanctuary where young witches and wizards could safely develop their abilities away from the suspicion and persecution of the medieval Muggle world. Each contributed unique protective enchantments reflecting their particular magical strengths. Gryffindor established boundary wards sensitive to intent, designed to recognize those approaching with malice in their hearts. Hufflepuff wove subtle welcome charms that would admit those seeking genuine education, while gently turning aside those with darker purposes. Ravenclaw created the castle's semi-sentient relationship with space itself, enabling stairs to redirect and rooms to relocate when danger threatened. Slytherin, ever pragmatic about human nature, incorporated detection systems for concealment and disguise, including passages that would reveal those traveling under magical obfuscation. These foundational protections were supplemented over the centuries by successive headmasters and headmistresses, each adding layers of security, reflecting the particular concerns of their era. By the 20th century, Hogwarts Castle was widely considered one of the most magically secure locations in Britain, perhaps second only to Gringotts in its impregnability. Albus Dumbledore, upon assuming the position of headmaster, further enhanced these measures with his own considerable magical innovations. The question then presents itself: how, given such formidable protections, has Hogwarts ever been successfully infiltrated? The answer reveals much about both the limitations of magical security and the ingenuity of those determined to breach it. Perhaps the most straightforward infiltration came from within the castle's own architecture. Salazar Slytherin's secret construction of the Chamber of Secrets represented the first compromise of Hogwarts security, a hidden space accessible only by his descendants, concealing a basilisk intended to purge the school of Muggle-born students. This earliest breach demonstrates a fundamental vulnerability. When those who establish protections harbor hidden agendas, they may build back doors into the very systems meant to protect. The chamber remained sealed for centuries until Tom Riddle, as a student, discovered its entrance and released the basilisk in 1942, resulting in the death of Myrtle Warren. 50 years later, through the enchanted diary Horcrux, Riddle's memory would again access the chamber by possessing Ginny Weasley, demonstrating that Hogwarts' defenses, while powerful against external threats, had limited effectiveness against dangers already harbored within. Another notable security failure occurred during the 1993 to 1994 school year. when Sirius Black, then believed to be a mass murderer and devoted follower of Voldemort, repeatedly gained access to the castle despite extraordinary measures implemented specifically to prevent his entry. Dementors patrolled the boundaries, portraits were placed on alert, and staff maintained constant vigilance. Yet Black successfully entered the castle multiple times. The secret to Black's success lay in knowledge accumulated during his time as a student, specifically his awareness of secret passages mapped by the Marauders, and his animagus ability to transform into a large black dog. This infiltration highlighted two significant vulnerabilities. First, that defensive enchantments often fail to account for magical abilities not commonly anticipated, such as animagi, and second, that institutional memory regarding the castle's own secrets had become fragmented and incomplete over time, with even the staff unaware of all potential entry points. The following academic year saw perhaps the most sophisticated and prolonged infiltration in Hogwarts history. Barty Crouch Jr., a Death Eater believed to be securely imprisoned in Azkaban, successfully assumed the identity of renowned Auror Alastair Mad-Eye Moody for an entire school year. Using Polyjuice Potion to maintain his disguise, Crouch not only penetrated the castle's defenses, but secured a position of authority as defense against the Dark Arts professor. This breach exposed a critical weakness in the castle's protective framework. While Hogwarts enchantments could detect many forms of concealment, they were not calibrated to identify impersonation through Polyjuice Potion. Even Dumbledore, with his legendary perceptiveness, did not recognize the impostor, though some speculate this may have been a calculated risk rather than a complete failure of detection, as the headmaster's priorities during this period remained enigmatic. Crouch's infiltration succeeded through meticulous preparation, including months studying Moody's mannerisms and speech patterns, possession of the Auror's magical eye and wooden leg, which themselves contained authentic magical signatures, and strategic avoidance of those who knew Moody most intimately. This case demonstrates that even the most sophisticated magical defenses can be circumvented through sufficient dedication and planning. The castle's security faced its most systematic compromise during Dolores Umbridge's tenure. Though her presence was officially sanctioned through her ministry appointment, Umbridge's actions constituted a functional infiltration as she worked to undermine Hogwarts' traditional values and autonomy. Her gradual accumulation of power, from High Inquisitor to Headmistress, allowed her to dismantle existing security measures and replace them with her own monitoring systems, including the infamous Inquisitorial Squad of student informants. Umbridge's tenure revealed a vulnerability even more fundamental than secret passages or magical disguises. The administrative framework of Hogwarts itself could be weaponized against the institution when external authorities gained sufficient leverage. No amount of protective enchantments could defend against a threat that arrived with official documentation and ministerial authority. The most dramatic breach of Hogwarts security occurred in June 1997, when Death Eaters gained entry through a vanishing cabinet that Draco Malfoy had spent months repairing. This paired magical device with one cabinet inside the Room of Requirement and its twin in Borgin and Berks created a tunnel through the castle's defenses, allowing for direct transportation from outside. The resulting Battle of the Astronomy Tower led to Albus Dumbledore's death and marked the beginning of Voldemort's control over Wizarding Britain's most important institutions. This incident highlighted a security principle that applies equally in magical and Muggle contexts. A defensive perimeter is only as strong as its weakest point. The Room of Requirement's unique properties, specifically its ability to transform according to need while remaining unplottable within the castle, created a blind spot in Hogwarts' security framework that Malfoy exploited with tragic effectiveness. During the 1997 to 1998 school year, with Severus Snape installed as headmaster and Death Eaters, Alecto and Amicus Caro serving as professors, Hogwarts effectively operated under occupation. The castle's defenses were turned inward, monitoring students for signs of resistance rather than protecting them from external threats. Yet even during this darkest period, the Room of Requirement continued to offer sanctuary to rebellious students, demonstrating the castle's deep-rooted capacity to shield its occupants, a form of innate protection perhaps more fundamental than any specific spell or ward. The final and most widespread breach came during the Battle of Hogwarts in May 1998, when Voldemort and his assembled forces launched a direct assault on the castle. Despite the combined defensive efforts of staff, students, and Order of the Phoenix members, the school's ancient protections, while temporarily holding back the attack, ultimately failed against such concentrated force. The battle exposed the limitations of even the most powerful protective magic when faced with determined, overwhelming opposition. In the years following Voldemort's defeat, Hogwarts security systems underwent comprehensive review and enhancement under Headmistress Minerva McGonagall. Lessons from each historic breach informed specific improvements. Passages to and from the castle were fully mapped and monitored. Identity verification procedures were implemented that could detect polyjuice and other forms of magical disguise. Governance structures were reformed to prevent administrative exploitation, and the Room of Requirements properties were more thoroughly studied and integrated into the castle's defensive framework. Perhaps most significantly, the events of the Second Wizarding War prompted a philosophical shift in how Hogwarts security was conceptualized. Rather than viewing the castle as an impenetrable fortress, McGonagall's administration recognized that absolute security is impossible, magical or otherwise. Instead, they developed layered, adaptive defenses designed to respond intelligently to varied threats, supplemented by improved coordination with external allies, like the Auror Office. The history of Hogwarts infiltrations reveals an essential truth about magical security. No protection is infallible, and every defense can be circumvented given sufficient knowledge, preparation, or inside assistance. Yet paradoxically, the castle's periodic vulnerabilities may have contributed to its remarkable longevity as an institution. By adapting after each breach, Hogwarts has evolved defenses responsive to changing threats rather than relying on static protections that grow obsolete. As our candles burn low and shadows deepen across these historical reflections, consider this: might the true strength of Hogwarts lie not in its walls or wards, but in its remarkable resilience, its capacity to endure, learn, and strengthen after each violation of its sanctuary. And what might this teach us about creating spaces of safety in our own lives that can withstand the inevitable tests of time and circumstance? Chapter 9. The Career of Kingsley Shacklebolt. In the tapestry of modern wizarding history, certain figures stand as pillars of integrity against which others are measured. Among these, few careers trace a more remarkable arc than that of Kingsley Shacklebolt, from dedicated Auror to resistance fighter, to Minister for Magic during Wizarding Britain's most essential period of reconstruction. Tonight, beneath these quiet stars, let us follow the path of a man whose deep voice and steady hand helped guide a fractured society toward healing. Kingsley Shacklebolt was born in 1953 to a respected pure-blood family that had long rejected notions of blood supremacy. His parents, both accomplished in international magical cooperation, raised their son with an unusual breadth of perspective for Wizarding Britain of that era. Young Kingsley grew up hearing languages beyond English at the family dinner table and meeting magical delegations from across Africa, Asia, and the Americas, experiences that would later inform his inclusive approach to governance. His childhood coincided with the early rise of Lord Voldemort, and though protected from direct exposure to the growing darkness, Kingsley absorbed the tension that gradually permeated wizarding society. Family friends disappeared or changed allegiances. Conversations among adults would halt when young ears approached. This atmosphere of uncertain loyalty and creeping fear would later provide valuable context for his work as both Auror and Minister. Education at Hogwarts sorted Kingsley into Ravenclaw, where his analytical mind and measured approach to challenges flourished. Though not flamboyant in his academic achievements, professors noted his particular aptitude for defense against the dark arts, charms, and transfiguration, the foundations of Auror training. More telling was his quiet leadership among fellow students, serving as prefect and later head boy during years when Voldemort's first ascension cast shadows even within the castle walls. Upon graduation in 1971, while many of his generation hesitated to commit to ministry service amid growing corruption, Kingsley entered Auror training with clear purpose. The 3-year program tested not only his magical prowess, but his mental resilience, ethics under pressure, and capacity to make life-or-death decisions with incomplete information. Instructors noted his exceptional calm in crisis simulations, and his rare ability to maintain perspective when others narrowed their focus under stress. Kingsley's early Auror assignments in the mid-1970s placed him primarily in counterintelligence roles rather than direct combat operations, a placement that initially frustrated the young wizard, but ultimately developed his most valuable professional skills. While fellow Aurors dueled Death Eaters in dramatic confrontations, Shacklebolt learned the subtler arts of information gathering, network mapping, and identifying patterns of dark activity below the threshold of obvious criminality. This background positioned him uniquely when Lord Voldemort disappeared after his attack on the Potter family in 1981. While many in the Ministry declared immediate victory, Kingsley remained methodically focused on dismantling the remaining Death Eater networks. His patient building of cases against figures like Antonin Dolohov and Augustus Rookwood demonstrated his understanding that dark movements survive beyond their figureheads, a perspective that would later prove prescient. The years of relative peace saw Kingsley rise steadily through Auror office ranks based on his combination of field effectiveness and administrative competence. By the early 1990s, he had earned a reputation as an Auror who closed cases without unnecessary casualties or collateral damage, a clean wand in departmental parlance. This reputation earned him increasingly sensitive assignments, including liaison roles with Muggle law enforcement that required exceptional judgment about when and how to navigate the statute of secrecy. Perhaps most significantly during this period, Shacklebolt developed his political acumen while maintaining personal integrity, a rare combination in a ministry increasingly defined by Cornelius Fudge's preference for appearance over substance. Kingsley learned to work effectively within bureaucratic constraints while remaining clear about his ethical boundaries. This balance allowed him to maintain positions of influence while avoiding the compromises that tainted many of his colleagues. When evidence of Lord Voldemort's return emerged in 1995, Kingsley faced the defining choice of his career. The Ministry's official position that Harry Potter and Albus Dumbledore were fabricating claims for personal gain contradicted both his professional assessment and moral compass. Rather than resign in protest, however, Shacklebolt made the more difficult choice to maintain his position while covertly joining the reconstituted Order of the Phoenix. This double role demanded extraordinary skill in compartmentalization and deception, qualities not naturally aligned with Kingsley's preference for directness, yet essential to his effectiveness during this critical period. By day, he maintained a convincing facade of ministry loyalty, even leading the search for Sirius Black that he deliberately kept focused in wrong directions. By night, he participated in Order operations, providing crucial intelligence about ministry movements and vulnerabilities. Kingsley's assignment to protect the Muggle Prime Minister represented both a vote of confidence in his abilities and an opportunity to serve as a crucial information conduit. From this unique position at the intersection of magical and Muggle governance, he observed how leadership functions across different contexts, lessons that would prove invaluable when he later assumed the Ministry's highest office. The Ministry's fall to Death Eater control in 1997 forced Shacklebolt fully underground. Now branded a traitor with a price on his head, he emerged as one of the Resistance's most effective organizers. His Auror training and deep knowledge of Ministry operations enabled him to establish secure communication networks, safe houses, and escape routes for Muggleborns and others targeted by the new regime. The Potter Watch radio broadcasts, to which he contributed under the codename Royal, provided vital morale and information when both were desperately needed. During these darkest months, Kingsley's leadership style came into full expression. Those who worked alongside him during the Resistance describe his remarkable capacity to inspire without false optimism, to acknowledge the gravity of their circumstances while maintaining absolute conviction that their efforts mattered. He combined tactical pragmatism with unwavering ethical clarity, authorizing dangerous operations when necessary, while never crossing into the moral territory of those they opposed. Kingsley fought with distinction during the Battle of Hogwarts in May 1998, demonstrating that his administrative responsibilities had not dulled his combat abilities. Witnesses describe his duel against multiple Death Eaters simultaneously as a masterclass in defensive spellcasting. His movements economical yet fluid, his counterspells precisely calibrated to neutralize rather than harm when possible. In the immediate aftermath of Voldemort's defeat, with the Ministry in disarray and public confidence shattered, the Wizengamot made the unprecedented decision to appoint Shacklebolt as interim Minister for Magic without the usual electoral process. This extraordinary measure reflected both the emergency circumstances and the unique trust Kingsley had earned across traditionally divided factions of wizarding society. The interim appointment became permanent in late 1998 through a special election in which Shacklebolt ran virtually unopposed, a mandate that provided political capital for the sweeping reforms his administration would implement over the following decade. Kingsley's ministerial priorities reflected both practical necessity and visionary ambition. His first actions addressed immediate security concerns, reorganizing the Auror office with emphasis on integrity and professional standards, dismantling the Muggle-born Registration Commission and other apparatus of persecution, and establishing transparent processes for identifying those who had acted under imperious versus willing collaborators. Beyond these emergency measures, however, Shacklebolt's administration pursued structural reforms that had been needed long before Voldemort's return. The complete reorganization of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement eliminated the corruption and favoritism that had undermined its effectiveness for generations. New standards for hiring and promotion throughout the ministry emphasized merit over blood status or connection. Perhaps most significantly, reforms to the Wizengamot diluted the influence of old pure-blood families and created more representative governance. Kingsley's approach to lingering blood status prejudice demonstrated his sophisticated understanding of cultural change. Rather than attempting to legislate new attitudes, which he recognized could create resentful compliance, rather than genuine shifts in perspective, his administration focused on creating conditions where integration could occur naturally. By appointing qualified witches and wizards of all backgrounds to visible positions, eliminating discriminatory regulations, and supporting educational initiatives that challenged old narratives, the Shacklebolt ministry addressed foundational issues rather than merely their symptoms. Relations with non-human magical beings saw perhaps the most significant evolution under Shacklebolt's leadership. His appointment of Hermione Granger to revitalize the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures signaled a new approach based on negotiation rather than dictation. While progress remained uneven, particularly with the more isolated communities like centaurs and merpeople, the groundwork was laid for more equitable relationships than Wizarding Britain had previously imagined possible. In international affairs, Minister Shacklebolt leveraged his family background and personal gravitas to rebuild relationships damaged during Voldemort's control of the ministry. His approach to international magical cooperation emphasized shared security concerns while respecting cultural differences in magical practice, a balance that earned respect even from traditionally skeptical magical governments in Eastern Europe and Asia. Despite his effectiveness and popularity, Kingsley announced in 2011 that he would not seek a third term as minister, explaining his belief that democracies function best with regular transfers of power. This decision, made from a position of strength rather than weakness, perhaps most clearly illuminates Shacklebolt's character. Power had always been for him a means rather than an end, a responsibility rather than a privilege. In the years since leaving office, Kingsley has maintained an active role in wizarding society while respecting his successor's autonomy. His establishment of the Phoenix Foundation, dedicated to supporting children orphaned or traumatized during both wizarding wars, provides ongoing care for the most vulnerable victims of conflicts he helped end. His occasional lectures at Hogwarts give new generations personal connection to historical events that might otherwise feel distant and abstract. The legacy of Kingsley Shacklebolt extends beyond specific policies or appointments to something more fundamental: the restoration of faith that institutions can serve the common good when led with integrity. In a society that had experienced the ministry transformed from protector to persecutor, his consistent alignment of words and actions rebuilt trust that many had thought permanently destroyed. As moonlight now silvers the window pane, and our exploration of this remarkable career draws to a close, we might consider what qualities enabled Kingsley Shacklebolt to maintain his ethical center through decades of pressure and temptation, and how might we cultivate similar foundations of character to guide our own journeys through challenging times. Chapter 10. The Creation of the Patronus Charm. Among the vast array of spells in the wizarding arsenal, few evoke the same sense of wonder and profound emotion as the Patronus Charm. As moonlight streams through our window, illuminating the quietness of night, let us explore the origins and nature of this remarkable magic, a spell that channels our happiest memories into a guardian of pure protective light, standing between the caster and the darkest forces known to wizard kind. The Patronus Charm, known formally by its incantation Expecto Patronum, originated in ancient Greece during the height of classical magical innovation. Historical records attribute its creation to a witch named Eliana Poppaea in the 3rd century BCE, though some magical scholars suggest the spell may have evolved from even earlier protective incantations used by Egyptian wizards to guard tombs against malevolent spirits. Poppaea developed the charm during a period when parts of Greece were plagued by dementors, or beings remarkably similar to what we now recognize as such, entities that emerged from the darkest caves of Mount Parnassus to feed upon human happiness. After her village suffered several devastating attacks that left residents hollow-eyed and bereft of joy, Poppaea dedicated herself to creating a defense against these seemingly unstoppable creatures. The breakthrough in her research came from an unlikely source. Rather than focusing on traditional Greek battle magic, Poppaea drew inspiration from healing practices. Ancient Greek magical healers understood that certain emotions could accelerate recovery from magical injuries, with joy and love being particularly potent forces. Poppaea theorized that if positive emotions could restore what was damaged within, perhaps they could also create a barrier against forces that sought to extract those same emotions. After years of experimentation, she developed the foundational structure of the charm we recognize today, a spell that draws upon the caster's happiest memories, distills their essence, and projects that concentrated positivity outward as a protective force. The name itself reflects this process. Expecto from Latin meaning I await or I look out for, and patronum meaning protector or patron. If you could observe the magical architecture of the Patronus charm, the layers of magical theory that underpin its practical application, you would discover a remarkably sophisticated spell structure. Unlike straightforward charms that affect physical objects or simple transformations, the Patronus operates across multiple magical domains simultaneously. At its foundation lies emotion-based magic, one of the most powerful and unstable magical forces. The spell requires not just recollection of a happy memory, but full emotional immersion within it, feeling again the love, joy, or peace of that moment, with sufficient intensity to create a wellspring of positive energy. This requirement explains why many otherwise talented witches and wizards struggle with the charm. Technical magical ability alone proves insufficient without emotional capacity and willingness to remain vulnerable even in moments of danger. Upon this emotional foundation, the spell constructs a complex magical barrier specifically calibrated to repel creatures that feed on happiness. The genius of Poppaea's design lies in how the barrier functions, not through opposition but through incompatibility. Dementors cannot process the concentrated positive emotion of a Patronus, It is not merely unpleasant for them, but fundamentally indigestible, like offering stone to a creature that consumes only water. The form a Patronus takes, whether corporeal or non-corporeal, depends on both the caster's magical strength and their emotional clarity. A fully corporeal Patronus represents perfect magical cohesion, where the positive emotion maintains consistent intensity and the spellwork channels that emotion with precise control. The resulting animal manifestation becomes so magically dense that it can physically interact with Dementors, driving them back through more than mere repulsion. The animal form itself reflects the caster's innermost identity, aspects of personality, values, and character too fundamental to consciously choose or manipulate. While magical research has never conclusively explained how this form is determined, leading theories suggest the Patronus reveals the shape of the caster's innate magical signature, visualizing through archetypal animal characteristics their essential magical nature. What makes the Patronus particularly fascinating to magical theorists is how it can change form in response to profound emotional transformation in the caster's life. Nymphadora Tonks famously experienced such a change when her Patronus shifted to a wolf following her deep love for Remus Lupin. This responsiveness to emotional development distinguishes the Patronus from fixed magical identifiers like wand affinity or house sorting, suggesting the charm maintains a dynamic connection to the caster's evolving self, rather than capturing a static moment of identity. The earliest recorded uses of the Patronus charm were exclusively for defense against Dementor-like entities. However, as wizarding society evolved, practitioners discovered additional applications for this powerful spell. By the Middle Ages, British wizards had adapted the charm to serve as a messenger, capitalizing on its connection to the caster's identity to ensure authenticity of communication. This innovation proved particularly valuable during the Goblin rebellions, allowing coordination between isolated pockets of wizarding resistance. The magical community initially regarded this communication adaptation with skepticism, as it seemed to trivialize a deeply serious protective spell. However, the inherent security of a Patronus messenger, being impossible to falsify due to its connection with the caster's essence, eventually established it as the most trusted form of emergency communication. The Order of the Phoenix would later refine this application to include vocal messages, creating the most secure communication network of the Second Wizarding War. Learning to cast the Patronus charm involves a journey unlike that of most magical education. While standard spells progress from theory to technique to successful execution, the Patronus often involves false starts, partial successes, and deeply personal breakthroughs that follow no predictable timeline. Even exceptionally gifted students may struggle for months before producing their first wisp of silver light, while others with average magical ability but profound emotional resilience might succeed more quickly. The traditional teaching method begins with memory selection, guiding students to identify not just happy memories, but those with sufficient emotional depth to sustain the spell. Many beginners mistakenly choose memories of surface pleasures or achievements rather than moments of connection, belonging, or profound contentment. A skilled instructor recognizes that the strongest Patronus often emerges not from the most exuberant memories, but from quiet moments of perfect peace or unconditional love. After memory selection comes the visualization phase, where students learn to immerse themselves fully in the recalled emotion while maintaining awareness of their present circumstances, a challenging balance of past feeling and present focus. Only when this emotional foundation is solidly established do teachers introduce the incantation and wand movement, emphasizing that technical perfection matters far less than sustained emotional connection. The developmental progression of the charm type picately moves from producing formless silver mist, a non-corporeal Patronus that can still provide limited protection, to brief manifestations of the corporeal form, to a fully realized animal guardian capable of operating independently from the caster for extended periods. Many witches and wizards never progress beyond the non-corporeal stage, which requires less emotional intensity to maintain, but provides less robust protection against multiple Dementors. During the educational reforms following the Second Wizarding War, the Patronus charm was incorporated into standard 7th-year defense against the dark arts curriculum at Hogwarts, a significant departure from previous practice, where it had been considered far too advanced for regular instruction. This change reflected both the increased emphasis on practical defensive magic and a recognition that the emotional resilience developed through learning the charm had value beyond its specific application against Dementors. The aftermath of the war also saw an intriguing phenomenon. Survivors who had previously struggled with the charm found themselves able to produce powerful Patronuses with less apparent effort. Magical researchers studying this trend theorized that profound experiences of loss followed by healing and renewal created a particular emotional quality, a bittersweet appreciation of joy made more precious through understanding its fragility, that resonated exceptionally well with the charm's magical structure. Across wizarding cultures worldwide, variations of the Patronus charm exist, each reflecting cultural differences in how positive emotions are conceptualized and expressed. The Japanese variant, Kitsunero Patronum, produces guardian spirits resembling foxes regardless of the caster's identity, but with varying numbers of tails indicating magical power. West African wizards cast Ash Patronum, which manifests not as animals, but as ancestral figures, offering protection through familial connection. Native American magical practitioners use no incantation at all, instead singing unique protection melodies that conjure guardians reflecting their clan or tribal affiliations. What remains consistent across these variations is the fundamental magical principle, channeling positive emotion into protective energy. This universality suggests that the Patronus touches something essential in magical human experience, the capacity to transform our happiest connections and moments into shields against darkness. Beyond its practical applications, the Patronus charm holds significant philosophical importance in wizarding thought. Many magical scholars view it as the clearest evidence that emotion is not merely an accompaniment to magic, but a fundamental power source for it. The charm demonstrates that feeling and power are inextricably linked, that at magic's highest expressions, technical skill and emotional authenticity cannot be separated. There exists a poignant counterpoint to the Patronus in magical history, those who cannot cast it. Individuals who have committed acts so terrible that they have damaged their capacity for positive emotion find themselves unable to produce even the faintest silver mist. This limitation affected many of Lord Voldemort's inner circle, who could command devastating destructive magic, but could not access the particular power that flows from undamaged human connection and joy. As our candle flickers lower and the night grows deeper around us, consider this final thought: what memory would fuel your own Patronus, and what guardian shape might emerge from the silver mist to reveal the nature you yourself may not fully recognize. In that space between happiness remembered and protection manifested lies a magic beyond mere spellcasting, a glimpse perhaps of who we truly are when our deepest selves take form in the world. Chapter 11. The Jokes and Pranks of Zonkos. Laughter has a magic all its own, a power to transform moments, ease tensions, and create memories that sparkle more brightly than any charm. In the bustling village of Hogsmeade, for nearly 2 centuries, one establishment harnessed that particular magic with delightful expertise. Tonight, as embers glow softly in our hearth, let us wander the aisles of Zonko's joke shop, where generations of young witches and wizards discovered the joy of perfectly orchestrated mischief. Zonko's joke shop first opened its doors in 1834, founded by Zephaniah Zonko, a wizard whose talent for creating whimsical enchantments was matched only by his legendary inability to maintain a serious demeanor for more than 5 consecutive minutes. After being dismissed from positions at both Gringotts for charming the floor to hiccup beneath particularly pompous customers, and the Ministry of Magic for enchanting interdepartmental memos to deliver themselves in operatic verse, Zonko decided to transform his proclivities from liability to livelihood. The original shop occupied a narrow storefront on Hogsmeade's High Street, its windows crowded with displays that changed color, emitted unusual sounds, or occasionally reached out to tap the shoulders of passing pedestrians who would turn to find no one there. The interior featured shelves that periodically rearranged themselves, forcing browsers to engage in a perpetual treasure hunt, and a counter that would subtly elongate itself when customer queues grew long. Zonko himself became as much an attraction as his products. With his purple top hat that would occasionally levitate a few inches above his head when he became particularly excited, and robes that displayed animated scenes of his most popular pranks in action, he cultivated an image of the consummate entertainer. His sales technique involved not merely describing his inventions but demonstrating them, often using unsuspecting customers as subjects, though always with a reversal charm ready at hand. The shop's earliest offerings reflected Zonko's personal magical specialties, enchanted objects that disrupted the ordinary in amusing but ultimately harmless ways. Hiccup Sweets caused exactly what their name suggested, lasting precisely 3 minutes before wearing off. Self-shuffling playing cards rearranged themselves when opponents weren't looking, though only in ways that created comically unlikely hands rather than guaranteed victories. Nose-biting teacups became the shop's first bestseller, so popular that the Hogwarts faculty eventually issued a specific ban after the hospital wing treated 15 bitten noses in a single afternoon. As the business flourished, Zonko expanded both his premises and his product line. By the 1870s, the shop occupied 3 adjoining buildings, each dedicated to different categories of mischief. The main store housed classic pranks and jokes. The annex specialized in enchanted novelties with longer-lasting effects. And the third space, accessible only to customers who could solve a riddle at the entrance, contained more sophisticated magical items for advanced pranksters. Zonko's business model cleverly balanced innovation with tradition. Each year brought new products to entice returning Hogwarts students, while maintaining a core selection of classic items that parents would reminisce about to their children, creating cross-generational appeal. This approach established Zonko's not merely as a shop, but as a wizarding cultural institution, a rite of passage for Hogwarts students experiencing their first Hogsmeade weekends. The creative process behind Zonko's products combined serious magical craftsmanship with whimsical purpose. A typical item might require months of development, beginning with a concept often inspired by customer suggestions, followed by prototype creation, extensive testing with staff serving as willing guinea pigs, refinement of the enchantments, and finally, packaging design. This rigorous process ensured that while Zonko's pranks might cause temporary embarrassment, they never resulted in lasting harm or truly malicious outcomes. Among the shop's most beloved classic inventions, sugar quills allowed generations of students to indulge their sweet tooth, while appearing to be deep in thought during lessons. These crystalline confections perfectly resembled actual quills, down to the finest feathery detail, yet dissolved slowly when sucked, providing a sustained sugar rush during particularly boring lectures. Their enchantment included a clever academic failsafe. If a professor directly asked a question of a student using one, the sugar quill would give a gentle warning tingle, allowing for a hasty transition to an actual writing implement. For those seeking more dynamic mischief, Zonko's offered dung bombs, small, innocuous-looking spheres that, when triggered by contact or a simple timing charm, released an overwhelmingly unpleasant odor that lingered for precisely 17 minutes. A duration determined after extensive market research identified it as sufficient for evacuation of the target area, while not causing excessive disruption to academic schedules. The scent itself was carefully calibrated to be revolting without inducing actual nausea, an ethical line that Zonko refused to cross despite requests for more potent versions. The screaming yo-yo combined Muggle toy design with wizarding enchantment, creating an object that operated as an ordinary yo-yo until it reached the bottom of its string, at which point it would emit a blood-curdling scream calibrated to be startling but not panic-inducing. This product emerged during a brief period in the 1920s, when Zonko's second-generation proprietor, Zephaniah Zonko Jr., developed a fascination with non-magical recreational items and sought to improve them through strategic enchantment. Perhaps the most ingenious of Zonko's offerings were their frog-spawn soap innocent-looking bars that would transform into a handful of slippery amphibian eggs when wet, and Hickof sweets, which caused precisely 7 minutes of uncontrollable hiccuping after consumption. Both represented the Zonko philosophy perfectly: temporary inconvenience, maximum visual comedy, and no lasting effects beyond the memory of shared laughter. The relationship between Zonko's joke shop and Hogwarts school evolved over generations into a complex dance of prohibition and tacit acceptance. School rules formally banned most Zonko products, with Argus Filch maintaining an ever-growing list of forbidden items posted prominently in his office. Yet many professors, particularly those who had themselves been Zonko customers in their youth, maintained a policy of selective enforcement, confiscating items used disruptively while turning blind eyes to more creative or amusing applications. Phileas Flitwick, charms master at Hogwarts, was known to occasionally visit the shop himself, ostensibly to stay informed about what to watch for, but more truthfully to admire the innovative spellwork. Some former students recall seeing him deep in conversation with Zonko's enchanters, discussing the technical aspects of their creations with professional respect despite their frivolous applications. The shop's busiest periods naturally coincided with Hogsmeade weekends during the Hogwarts school year. On these special Saturdays, Zonko's would often introduce exclusive products available only for a single day, creating a frenzy of excitement among students who would line up outside before opening hours. Staff would distribute hot chocolate to those waiting in winter months, occasionally enchanted to turn the drinker's hair festive colors for an hour, a preview of the mischief available inside. During summer months, when student customers were absent, Zonko's shifted focus to mail-order business and tourist trade. Enchanted catalogs delivered throughout Britain would showcase seasonal specialties with animated illustrations demonstrating each product in use. These catalogs became collectibles in their own right, with particularly clever editions preserved by families for years after the products themselves had been discontinued. The shop's golden age coincided with the Marauders' time at Hogwarts in the 1970s. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew were such regular and enthusiastic customers that staff greeted them by name and occasionally set aside new shipments for their first review. The influence was mutual. Several Zonko's products from this era were directly inspired by Marauder pranks, though the young wizards never sought credit or compensation, considering it honor enough to have their mischief immortalized in commercial form. Fred and George Weasley continued this tradition 2 decades later, their relationship with Zonko's evolving from wide-eyed first-year customers to discerning connoisseurs to eventual competitors. Staff recalled the twins spending hours examining the magical mechanics of various jokes, occasionally providing suggestions for improvements that the proprietors recognized as legitimately innovative. This respectful rivalry would ultimately contribute to Zonko's eventual decline, as the Weasleys' own enterprise implemented more modern and sophisticated enchantments. The Second Wizarding War marked a turning point for the beloved joke shop. As darkness fell over magical Britain, frivolity became both more necessary for morale and more dangerous to display publicly. Zonko's initially attempted to remain open with a subdued inventory, but the atmosphere of fear in Hogsmeade, particularly after Dementors began patrolling the village, made sustaining a business built on laughter increasingly untenable. The shop closed its doors temporarily in 1997, with the proprietors promising to return when laughter is safe again. Sadly, that particular incarnation of Zonko's would never reopen. The combination of war damage to the premises, economic hardship throughout the wizarding community, and the meteoric rise of Weasley's wizard wheezes created circumstances from which the traditional business couldn't recover. Yet the legacy of Zonko's persists in wizarding cultural memory. In the stories parents tell their children about their own Hogsmeade adventures, in the techniques adopted and refined by subsequent joke enterprises, and in the fundamental recognition that laughter, particularly in youth, is not merely recreation, but a vital magical power in its own right. Many products first popularized at Zonko's remain available today, their packaging updated, but their essential enchantments unchanged across generations. The empty storefront that once housed Zonko's was eventually occupied by a branch of Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, a development that industry observers considered less a replacement than an inheritance. Fred and George Weasley made a point of incorporating several classic Zonko's items into their inventory as historical tributes, ensuring that the spells and surprises that had delighted their own younger selves remained available to new generations of mischief makers. In magical households throughout Britain, attics and keepsake boxes still contain Zonko novelties preserved long after their enchantments have faded, mementos not merely of specific pranks, but of the particular joy found in perfectly timed mischief shared among friends. These artifacts carry emotional magic that outlasts any charm or hex, connecting generations through the universal language of laughter. As our evening draws to a close, and this tale of magical mirth concludes, I wonder what innocent mischief might you have been tempted to purchase had you wandered through Zonko's on a crisp Hogsmeade afternoon, and which friend would you have most wanted to surprise with your selection? Chapter 12. The Detection Powers of a Faux Glass. In the realm of magical detection, where invisibility may be granted through cloaks and potions, where polyjuice can transform enemies into the appearance of allies, and where threats may approach from directions unseen, certain devices transcend ordinary vigilance. As our final tale begins, let us turn our attention to one of the most mysterious and valuable tools in a defender's arsenal: the faux glass, a magical mirror that reveals not reflections of self, but visions of one's enemies. The faux glass stands among the oldest surviving magical detection devices, with specimens dating to the early medieval period discovered in wizarding archaeological sites from Scotland to Syria. Unlike many magical inventions with clearly documented origins, the creator of the first faux glass remains unknown, a mystery that magical historians attribute to the secretive nature of its early applications among wizarding nobility, who preferred their security measures to remain as obscure as their vulnerabilities. If you were to encounter a faux glass in its traditional form, you would find a mirror of unusual proportions, taller than it is wide, typically standing between 3 and 5 feet in height, set within a frame, often crafted from protective woods like rowan or blackthorn. The glass itself appears slightly smoky when inactive, with a depth that seems to extend beyond the physical constraints of the mirror's backing. This dimensional quality hints at the complex enchantment layers that transform an ordinary reflective surface into a vigilant sentinel. The fundamental principle behind the faux glass involves a sophisticated magical synthesis of divination, psychic extension, and sympathetic connection between the mirror and its owner. Upon first acquisition, a new faux glass must undergo an attunement ritual wherein the owner places a drop of their blood, or in modern, less invasive versions, a strand of hair upon the mirror's surface at midnight during a waning moon. This material connection establishes the magical tether that allows the mirror to identify those who intend harm specifically to its bonded witch or wizard. Once properly attuned, the faux glass begins its protective vigil. When inactive, meaning no significant threats are present, the mirror's surface shows only swirling mist, occasionally coalescing into indistinct shadows that disperse before taking clear form. These phantom movements reassure the owner that the enchantment remains functional, even in times of safety. Some users describe the inactive faux glass as having a gentle, almost hypnotic quality, the slow dance of potential within its depths creating an oddly calming effect despite its serious purpose. The true power of the faux glass reveals itself when enemies approach. As those who wish harm to the owner come physically nearer, shadowy figures begin to appear within the mirror's depths. These apparitions do not show the enemy as they physically appear at that moment, but rather manifest a representation of their essential nature and intent. What magical theorists call the threat self, the version of a person that exists when their harmful intentions dominate their consciousness. The degree of clarity in these images corresponds directly to the proximity of the threat. A distant enemy might appear as little more than a darkened silhouette lacking distinct features. As they draw closer, the figure gains definition, facial features emerge, sometimes distorted to reflect malevolent intent, occasionally accompanied by visual representations of the harm they plan to inflict. When danger stands at the threshold, the images become so clear that, as Alastair Moody famously described, you can see the whites of their eyes. This gradual clarification serves a vital practical function, allowing the owner to assess not only the presence of threat, but its imminence, enabling proportional preparation. A faint shadow might warrant increased vigilance. A fully formed figure demands immediate defensive action. For aurors and those in similarly dangerous professions, this advanced warning system has proven quite literally life-saving on countless occasions. What makes the faux glass particularly valuable is its immunity to conventional magical concealment. Invisibility cloaks, disillusionment charms, polyjuice potion disguises, none of these can prevent a properly functioning faux glass from revealing an approaching enemy. The mirror responds not to physical appearance but to intent and essence, rendering surface deceptions ineffective. During the First Wizarding War, this quality made faux glasses priority targets for destruction during Death Eater raids, as they could identify attackers despite their masks and cloaks. The limitations of the faux glass, however, are as important to understand as its capabilities. The device detects only active threats moving toward the owner, not potential enemies remaining stationary or moving away. A witch or wizard could be surrounded by those who wish them harm, yet if these individuals are not actively approaching with immediate malicious intent, the mirror remains misty and indistinct. This constraint explains why even the most paranoid security experts supplement faux glasses with other detection measures designed to identify different threat profiles. Furthermore, the faux glass cannot distinguish between levels of threat beyond proximity. A person approaching with intent to deliver a minor hex appears alongside one planning lethal harm, though experienced users learn to interpret subtle differences in how different categories of enemies manifest within the glass. The mirror also cannot identify specifically what form the threat will take, only that it exists and approaches. Most significantly, the faux glass responds exclusively to dangers directed at its bonded owner, not to threats against others nearby. This limitation led to the development of specialized variants for particularly security-conscious families, wherein multiple blood or hair samples are incorporated into the attunement ritual, creating a collective protection. These family faux glasses are exceptionally rare and difficult to create, requiring a master enchanter with specialized knowledge of familial magical bonds. The creation of a quality faux glass involves an intricate process, combining physical craftsmanship with layered enchantment. The mirror itself must be poured rather than cut, using silver-infused sand melted in a crucible that has never been used for any other magical purpose. During cooling, the liquid glass is exposed to moonlight reflected from natural bodies of water, a process that imbues it with receptivity to potential futures rather than present realities. The frame serves as more near housing. It contains runic inscriptions that establish boundaries for the enchantment, preventing it from extending awareness too far, which would render the glass perpetually clouded with distant possible threats, while ensuring sufficient range for practical warning. These runes are typically carved during specific astronomical alignments that enhance their protective properties, then infused with essence of sentinel herbs like aconite and rowan berry. The most challenging aspect of CR, eating a faux glass, lies in the final enchantment sequence, which requires the caster to maintain simultaneous awareness of 13 distinct magical formulae while performing a wandwork pattern so complex that master enchanters often train for years before attempting their first independent creation. This difficulty explains both the rarity of faux glasses and their considerable expense when available through specialized magical artificers. Throughout wizarding history, certain families became renowned for their particular skill in faux glass creation. The Moody family, which produced several generations of notable aurors including Alastor Mad-Eye Moody, guarded specialized enchantment techniques that resulted in particularly sensitive mirrors capable of detecting threats at greater distances than standard versions. The Black family reportedly possessed a faux glass that could identify not only physical dangers, but also threats to reputation and social standing, a modification consistent with their preoccupation with status and legacy. The use of faux glasses became particularly widespread during the First Wizarding War, when the uncertainty of knowing whom to trust created unprecedented demand for reliable threat detection. The Ministry of Magic installed massive, room-sized versions in key locations, capable of monitoring approaches to entire departments rather than individuals. Mungo's hospital acquired specialized medical variants that could identify patients whose conditions were deteriorating into critical status, interpreting the body's own processes as enemies when they threatened life. During the peaceful interlude between Voldemort's first defeat and his return, many faux glasses were relegated to storage, their constant vigilance deemed unnecessary and eventually somewhat unfashionable, a reminder of darker times best forgotten. This cultural shift toward complacency created opportunity for dark forces to reorganize undetected, as many who might have received early warning through their mirrors had set them aside, or sold them to curiosity shops where they were purchased as interesting artifacts rather than vital security tools. Alastor Moody proved a notable exception to this trend, maintaining not only his primary faux glass, but multiple backup versions with varying enchantment parameters. His legendary paranoia, often mocked by colleagues during peaceful years, manifested in his practice of positioning a faux glass to be visible from his bed, another from his dining table, and carrying a pocket-sized version during all waking hours. This vigilance, while extreme, undoubtedly contributed to his survival through numerous attempts on his life, until, ironically, he was caught in a situation where he had no opportunity to check his detection devices. The Second Wizarding War saw a resurgence in faux glass use, though with significant adaptation. Recognizing that conventional models had become well known to Death Eaters, who would stay beyond detection range until ready to attack, magical artificers developed disguised versions concealed within ordinary household objects. Faux glasses masquerading as decorative wall mirrors, reflecting pools in garden fountains, and even enchanted windows provided protection without advertising their presence to potential attackers. Members of the Order of the Phoenix utilized a network of synchronized faux glasses during this period, developed by Albus Dumbledore based on the principles of the original Hogwarts house point-counting hourglasses. These connected mirrors would simultaneously display threats approaching any Order member, allowing for rapid response to attacks against isolated individuals. The system proved particularly effective for protecting those in remote locations, until the Ministry's fall compromised the central enchantment hub. In contemporary wizarding society, the faux glass maintains its position as a standard security measure for those in high-risk professions. The Auror Office provides customized versions to all field operatives, while Gringotts equips its curse breakers with specially modified variants calibrated to detect not only human threats, but also triggered magical defenses in ancient tombs and vaults. Private security firms offer monitoring services for wizarding businesses, using centralized faux glass arrays tended by vigilant staff, who can dispatch response teams at the first sign of approaching danger. Modern innovations have addressed some traditional limitations of the device. The selective faux glass, developed in 2001, allows users to filter threats by severity, preventing the mirror from clouding with minor annoyances during high-alert situations. The directional faux glass incorporates subtle color gradients that indicate the physical direction from which the threat approaches. Most recently, experimental models that can temporarily maintain awareness of an enemy even after they retreat or change course have shown promise in field testing, though they remain prone to false positives. For the average witch or wizard, owning a faux glass represents a significant investment in personal security, both financially and psychologically. Living with constant awareness of potential threats requires a particular temperament. Some find the mirror's vigilance reassuring, while others discover that knowing precisely when enemies approach creates its own form of anxiety. This ambivalence explains why faux glasses tend to be most commonly found in homes of those who have experienced genuine danger firsthand, rather than those merely concerned with theoretical threats. Beyond its practical applications, the faux glass holds a place in wizarding philosophy as a powerful metaphor for different approaches to security and trust. Some magical thinkers view constant monitoring for threats as fundamentally harmful to community bonds, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where anticipation of danger manifests the very hostility one fears. Others argue that clear awareness of genuine threats allows for appropriate boundaries rather than indiscriminate suspicion. This philosophical tension plays out in ongoing debates about the role of magical surveillance in post-war wizarding society. Perhaps most profoundly, the faux glass raises questions about the nature of enmity itself. What does it mean that the mirror detects intent rather than action? That it responds to approaching threats rather than static hatred? That it cannot distinguish between mortal danger and minor malice? These questions have occupied magical ethicists for centuries, with no definitive resolution beyond the practical recognition that knowing one's enemy's approach, whatever their specific intentions, provides valuable time for preparation, whether that means raising shields, extending an olive branch, or simply choosing the ground on which one will stand. As our final candle flickers low, and this exploration of wizarding wonders comes to a close, perhaps we might consider, if you possessed a faux glass of your own, would you keep it prominently displayed where its warnings could never be missed, or tucked away to be consulted only in moments of specific concern? And what might this choice reveal not about your enemies, but about yourself?